Some people break up and turn their pain into poetry. They reread old messages, replay the same goodbye 100 times, and keep one foot emotionally trapped in a story that already ended. But not these signs. When love collapses, they may cry, rage, disappear for a while, or act colder than anyone expected, yet somewhere inside them, a switch flips faster than most people realize. And once that switch is off, the past stops having power. That is what makes them so unforgettable and, at the same time, so dangerous to underestimate. People often assume that the one who smiled first healed first. Not always. But these 5 signs have something rare: survival instinct in love. They know how to detach, how to redirect energy, how to protect their pride, and most importantly, how to stop worshiping what already hurt them. They do not always move on because they never cared. Sometimes they move on because they cared too deeply to let the same wound destroy them twice. And here is the twist nobody tells you. The signs who forget their exes the fastest are not necessarily the coldest. Some of them burn hot, love hard, and mean every word while the relationship lasts. But once disappointment enters the room, they begin changing shape. They become future-oriented, restless, reborn. They would rather chase a new life than sit in the ashes of an old one. They do not ask, what if they come back? They ask, who am I becoming now? So if you have ever been shocked that someone who once loved with all their heart suddenly seemed emotionally untouchable, keep reading. Because these are the 5 zodiac signs who recover from heartbreak with surprising speed, and the reasons why will explain far more than just breakups. They will explain pride, instinct, self-respect, and the secret psychology of people who simply refuse to stay broken. 1. Gemini. Gemini forgets an ex fast because the mind moves before the heart can protest. Gemini is one of the most emotionally misunderstood signs after a breakup. People think they move on quickly because they are shallow. That is not the truth. Gemini moves on quickly because staying emotionally stuck feels like suffocation. This is a sign ruled by motion, thought, curiosity, and mental survival. The second a relationship ends, Gemini's inner world begins reorganizing itself at lightning speed. They start analyzing everything, reinterpreting the connection, finding cracks they ignored before, and telling themselves a new story where the breakup was not the end of life, just the end of one chapter. What makes Gemini so fast at forgetting an ex is distraction, but not in the simple sense. Gemini does not merely keep busy. Gemini creates a whole new emotional atmosphere. New people, new music, new routines, new conversations that make the old attachment feel smaller every day. They know how to shift their focus so completely that even deep heartbreak can lose its grip faster than anyone expects. One day they are silent, the next day they are laughing, posting, planning, flirting with life again, and the ex is left wondering how they disappeared from Gemini's emotional center so fast. But here's the deeper reason. Gemini cannot romanticize pain for too long. Once they see the relationship clearly, once they realize they were misunderstood, neglected, or emotionally boxed in, their feelings begin to detach on their own. Their love depends on stimulation, trust, and freedom. If the relationship became repetitive, manipulative, heavy, or emotionally confusing, Gemini does not just leave the person, they leave the version of themselves that suffered there. And once that happens, going back feels impossible. The most shocking part is that Gemini may still remember every detail, every phrase, every late-night conversation. But memory is not the same as attachment. They remember, they just do not stay emotionally loyal to the ghost. That is why they are among the fastest signs to forget an ex. Not because the love was fake, but because their spirit was never built to live in the cemetery of what is already over. 2. Sagittarius. Sagittarius forgets an ex fast because freedom heals them faster than nostalgia ever could. When Sagittarius gets heartbroken, many people expect dramatic sadness, emotional speeches, or some visible sign that they are shattered. Sometimes that happens, but not for long. Sagittarius is one of the few signs that can go from heartbreak to reinvention with almost frightening speed. Why? Because this sign instinctively understands something most people learn too late. Pain grows when you build a home inside it. Sagittarius refuses to do that. This is the sign that survives by movement, meaning, and open horizons. The moment a breakup becomes real, Sagittarius begins reaching for air. They want distance, motion, change, and a reminder that life is still enormous. They may book a trip, start a new obsession, change their appearance, throw themselves into work, meet new people, or suddenly become obsessed with self-improvement. It is not performative. It is medicine. Sagittarius heals by expanding, and expansion leaves very little room for emotional decay. They also forget exes quickly because disappointment changes how they see a person. Sagittarius can forgive many things, but once respect is broken, innocence dies. If they feel betrayed, controlled, lied to, or forced into emotional smallness, something inside them hardens. The ex is no longer a tragic love story. The ex becomes a lesson, and Sagittarius would rather turn a wound into wisdom than into an altar. Another reason they move on so fast is pride mixed with philosophy. Sagittarius hates the feeling of chasing someone who has already chosen distance. They would rather look ahead than beg for crumbs from the past. Even when they are hurting, they want their dignity. They want to believe that the universe removes someone because something bigger is coming. That belief gives them speed. While other signs stay trapped in emotional debris, Sagittarius starts searching for the next sunrise. And yet, do not mistake their quick recovery for lack of feeling. Sagittarius can love with breathtaking sincerity. They can be warm, loyal, generous, and deeply devoted. But they are not designed to worship what keeps hurting them. Once love turns into limitation, their soul begins packing its bags. That is why their exes are often stunned by how quickly Sagittarius becomes unreachable. They did not stop feeling overnight. They simply remembered that life is too wide to spend it staring at a closed door. 3. Aries. Aries forgets an ex fast because pride, fire, and instinct refuse to let heartbreak win. Aries does not break softly. When this sign is hurt, the pain can be intense, immediate, and explosive. They may feel angry, impulsive, restless, even humiliated that they cared so much. But what makes Aries one of the fastest signs to forget an ex is simple. They are built to survive through action. While other people freeze after heartbreak, Aries starts moving, and movement becomes emotional rescue. This sign cannot sit still in sadness for too long. It feels unnatural, almost insulting to their spirit. Aries wants momentum, a new challenge, a new desire, a new reason to wake up feeling powerful again. Even when they are wounded, they instinctively reach for what brings back their sense of self. That might mean throwing themselves into fitness, work, travel, appearance, ambition, or even a new romantic thrill. Aries heals by reclaiming energy, not by endlessly processing the loss. The hidden reason Aries forgets an ex so fast is ego, but not in a shallow way. Aries has a deep inner need to feel chosen, respected, and wanted. If a breakup makes them feel rejected, they do not want to stay in that emotional position for long. The fire inside them starts demanding recovery. They begin telling themselves, "Why am I still suffering over someone who lost access to me?" That sentence alone can shift everything. Once Aries decides they deserve better, attachment begins to burn away. And here's what people rarely understand. Aries may still feel pain long after they stop showing it. But once they sense that staying attached is weakening them, they cut emotional ties with brutal speed. They do not enjoy feeling powerless. They do not like mourning what no longer fights for them. They would rather become stronger than become sentimental. So instead of feeding the wound, they feed the comeback. That is why Aries can look almost shockingly over someone in record time. It is not always because the love was small. Sometimes it is because their survival instinct is bigger. Their heart may bruise, but their spirit refuses to kneel for long. And once Aries turns heartbreak into fuel, the ex becomes part of the smoke behind them, visible for a moment, then gone. 4. Aquarius. Aquarius forgets an ex fast because emotional distance is their secret weapon, and once the mind disconnects, the heart follows. Aquarius is one of the most surprising signs after a breakup because people almost never understand what is happening beneath the surface. At first, they may seem calm, detached, even suspiciously okay. But that does not mean nothing was real. Aquarius can love deeply, loyally, and with incredible sincerity. The difference is that when something breaks beyond repair, they do not always collapse outwardly. They begin separating from the pain internally, almost like someone quietly shutting down one room of the house so the fire cannot spread. What makes Aquarius forget an ex so quickly is their ability to change perspective. The moment they realize the relationship is no longer emotionally healthy, mentally stimulating, or aligned with their future, they begin stepping back inside themselves. They stop feeding the attachment. They stop romanticizing the past. They stop asking the question that ruins so many people after heartbreak: but what if it could still work? Aquarius is far more likely to ask, why would I stay emotionally connected to something that no longer respects my peace? And once peace becomes the priority, the detachment is almost surgical. Aquarius does not always leave loudly. Sometimes they leave while smiling, while being polite, while sounding reasonable. But emotionally, they are already halfway gone. This sign has an extraordinary instinct for protecting their independence, and nothing terrifies them more than becoming trapped in repetitive pain. If the relationship turned possessive, predictable, manipulative, or emotionally draining, Aquarius starts feeling as though love itself is turning into a cage. And they do not survive well in cages. Another reason they move on fast is that Aquarius is future bound. They are drawn to possibility, progress, new ideas, new people, and the next version of life. Their mind is always reaching forward. So even if part of them hurts, another part is already curious about what comes next. They do not enjoy sitting in emotional stagnation. They want movement, purpose, reinvention. That is why an ex can become irrelevant to them faster than expected. Not erased, just demoted, moved out of the center of their universe. The most painful truth for anyone who loses an Aquarius is this: once they emotionally detach, getting them back is almost impossible. Because Aquarius does not just leave a relationship, they leave the illusion. They stop believing in the story that kept them waiting. And the second that inner belief dies, so does the old attachment. That is why they are one of the fastest signs to forget an ex. They do not always stop caring in one day, but once they stop hoping, the rest happens quickly. 5. Capricorn. Capricorn forgets an ex fast because they turn heartbreak into discipline. And discipline always wins. Capricorn may not look like the obvious choice on this list, but that is exactly what makes them so powerful after a breakup. This sign does not heal through noise. They do not usually make a spectacle of their pain. They do not need the world to know how hurt they are. Capricorn goes quiet, gets serious, and starts rebuilding. And that is the reason they often forget an ex faster than people expect. While others are drowning in emotion, Capricorn is already constructing a new life brick by brick. This sign has a deep instinct for emotional self-control. Even when the heartbreak is real, even when the betrayal cuts deep, Capricorn has a voice inside that says, keep going. They may cry in private. They may carry sadness longer than anyone sees, but they refuse to let pain become their identity. The breakup becomes a fact, and once something becomes a fact in Capricorn's mind, they start adapting to it. Not dramatically, efficiently, quietly, completely. Capricorn forgets an ex fast because they are brutally honest about consequences. If a relationship failed because of inconsistency, immaturity, broken promises, disrespect, or emotional instability, Capricorn does not want to romanticize it later. They may miss the person, but they do not easily forget what the relationship cost them. Lost time matters to Capricorn. Lost energy matters. Trust matters. So while softer signs may keep longing for potential, Capricorn remembers reality. And reality helps them detach. There is also pride here, but it is a colder, more strategic kind of pride. Capricorn does not want to chase what has already chosen confusion. They do not want to beg for reassurance, repeat the same argument 10 times, or keep bleeding for someone who could not meet them properly. The moment they understand that love is becoming unstable, their survival instinct kicks in. They start protecting their future, their goals, their dignity, their nervous system. And suddenly the breakup becomes less about loss and more about self-preservation. What truly makes Capricorn unforgettable after heartbreak is that they turn pain into results. They glow up, they work harder, they get sharper, more focused, more selective. Their ex may think Capricorn is still quietly suffering somewhere, but in reality, Capricorn is often transforming the entire structure of their life. New standards, new boundaries, new success. They do not always get over it in a soft, sentimental way. Sometimes they outgrow it, and that may be the most final kind of moving on there is. That is why Capricorn belongs on this list. They may not move on with fireworks or dramatic declarations, but they move on with something even stronger: decision. And once Capricorn decides the past no longer deserves a place in the future, the emotional door closes with a force that few people ever see coming. Final thoughts. So who are the 5 signs most likely to forget their exes the fastest? Gemini, Sagittarius, Aries, Aquarius, and Capricorn. Not because they never loved deeply, not because they are heartless, not because they are incapable of loyalty. In fact, the truth is far more interesting than that. These are the signs who know, each in their own way, that heartbreak can either become a prison or a turning point. And they choose the turning point. Gemini escapes through motion of the mind. Sagittarius escapes through freedom. Aries escapes through fire and momentum. Aquarius escapes through detachment and self-protection. Capricorn escapes through discipline and rebuilding. Different methods, same result. They do not stay kneeling before closed doors for long. And maybe that is the real lesson hidden inside this horoscope. Sometimes moving on quickly is not a sign that love was fake. Sometimes it is proof that self-respect finally became stronger than longing. Sometimes the person who walks away first is not the least hurt, just the one who knows that life does not stop because one chapter did. Because the truth is harsh, beautiful, and impossible to ignore. Some people were not born to spend years grieving what already ended. They were born to rise, reset, and become unreachable to the very pain that once thought it could keep them.